Martin Robertson kept his British Museum job because he did not clean the exhibits. At a museum, an object is not a room and a surface is not always meant to be scrubbed. The work is about preserving the collection, not treating it like everyday furniture. That difference mattered because some exhibits need careful handling, not ordinary cleaning. Robertson's value was tied to knowing when to leave the objects alone. So the choice that might cost a cleaner a job instead protected his place at the museum. The decision matched the real priority of the institution. His job survived because restraint was more useful than scrubbing. In the British Museum, preserving the collection mattered more than making it look freshly cleaned. Henry Darger worked as a Chicago janitor, and his landlords later found a huge private art world he had kept hidden. He lived reclusively so the work stayed out of public view during his life. It sat inside his apartment unseen by the wider city. After his time there, his former landlords came across the hidden material. That discovery exposed a private body of art instead of an ordinary tenant's room. Once found, the work began reaching people beyond the apartment and neighborhood. The unusual contrast of janitor and artist drew attention to the collection. That accidental discovery turned a hidden life into a major art legacy. The ordinary room where he lived became the place where his public story began. A national forest in Indiana once covered Lick Creek, a settlement of freeborn black people. Lick Creek was a community, not just a place name, and it stood in what is now Hoosier National Forest. Its history is preserved through place history, where the land itself points to people who lived there before the forest became the main label. When the settlement disappeared from everyday view, the same land was read as wilderness instead of a lived-in community. That makes Lick Creek a buried layer of the forest, a history most visitors would miss without the name. Tanguturi Prakasam helped lead India's independence movement, then later became a dissenting figure inside the Indian government. That contrast spans two political worlds, anti-colonial struggle and the government that followed independence. He did not simply step away after victory. The shift was not a change of loyalty to the nation. It was a change in role from movement leadership to dissent within power. His career shows that independence did not end disagreement. Political conviction could still clash with the institutions built after freedom was won. That is why Prakasam stands out in memory. One life crossed from protest outside power to dissent inside it. A gold bracteate from the Vindelev Hoard may carry the oldest known reference to Odin. A bracteate is a thin, stamped gold pendant, and this one comes from a hoard of buried objects called Vindelev. Its inscription has been interpreted as a reference to Odin, which is why the reading matters so much. If that interpretation holds, the object pushes Odin's written record farther back than before. That turns one small artifact into a timeline marker for early Norse belief. When the Miller House opened to the public in 2011, its crowds were compared to a new Disney ride. The Miller House is a notable modernist house in Indiana, and public access had been limited before that opening. Once the doors opened, people could finally enter a house they had only heard about, and that new access drove demand. The comparison to a Disney ride captured the scale of the response. A house was no longer just property but an event. That opening showed how architecture can draw crowds like entertainment when access turns a private place into a public destination. Aline Sitoe Diatta was declared a heroine of Senegal nearly 40 years after her death was announced. Her name had already lived in public memory long before the state gave it official weight. The delay mattered because recognition came only after her death had already entered the public record for decades. When Senegal formally honored her, memory became state recognition instead of private remembrance. That decision gave her legacy an official place in Senegal's national story, decades after the announcement of her death. Emma Finucane became the first British woman in 60 years to win 3 medals at a single Olympic Games. This was one athlete, 1 games, and 3 medals collected in the same Olympic week. That combination is what made the result so rare in British history. The benchmark mattered because the count was measured across a single Olympic Games, not across a career. Finucane matched a historic level that few British women have ever reached. That placed her among a very small historical group and ended a 60-year gap for British women. The result turned one Olympic performance into a national benchmark. For British Olympic history, the number to remember is 3 medals in 1 Games. It is a rare mark, and Finucane is the woman who reached it after 60 years.